Melly Sews and the designer of Blank Slate Patterns. Today I'm going to show you how to make a really simple skirt with only 2 materials and no pattern needed. All you're going to need is some 1-inch wide elastic, and you want this cut to the length of the person's waist. And if you check out my blog, and there's a link right down here, you'll find a table that has waist lengths for a lot of different sizes. In addition to that, you're going to need your fabric, and it's going to need to be at least 1.5 to 2 times longer than the waist measurement that you're using. And then lengthwise, it's going to need to be whatever length you want the skirt to be. And again, if you check out that blog link down here, I've got skirt lengths listed for you so that you don't have to guess on your measurements. So I've got my fabric here, and you can see it's a little bit see-through. I will definitely be wearing a slip with this type of skirt, but I just wanted to let you see the drape of it. This type of fabric is called voile, and voile is a thinner weave, and it drapes a lot nicer. You'll find this kind of fabric in apparel fabric stores online, or in the apparel section of the big box fabric stores. So I've got my fabric cut to the length I want my skirt, plus 1.5 inches, and that's going to be for my waistband on top, and then plus 1 inch on the bottom for my hem. So I've actually added 2.5 inches to the length that I want my skirt to be. And then this is about 2 times longer than my waist measurement that I'm going to be using. And all I'm going to do for the first step is fold my fabric in half, right sides together, and then on this short end over here, I'm going to sew a seam right down the ends, and I am going to, that'll be the center back seam of my skirt. Now you may notice on the close-up that this has an overlock stitch that I did with the serger on the edges. That's just to help keep them from unraveling. Again, and there's a different link down here on my blog, you can look at different seam finishes for how you want to finish your skirt. And this is one of the options. So I went ahead and did that before I'm going to sew my skirt together. Now, if you're a beginner sewer, you may want to go ahead and pin this edge, but I feel pretty confident that I can keep my raw edges in line while sewing my skirt without pins. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm using a 1/2 inch seam allowance, so I'm lining up my raw edges to the 1/2 inch mark on my sewing machine, and then I am just going to sew down this back seam. Alright, now that I've got this seam sewn on my skirt, I'm going to go with the top edge here, and I need to create a casing for my elastic. To do that, I'm going to be using the ironing board here, and I'm going to be using a little tool, little cheater tool that I made for myself. This is a piece of cardstock, and all I've done to it is laid a ruler across and then measured in increments from the edge and drawn a line. So I've got the ironing board all set up over here, and I'm going to show you how I use this little piece of cardstock to fold my casing. I want to start by just folding the casing in 1/4 inch, and that is my first line here. So I'm just going to push the cardstock up to the edge of the fabric and iron the fabric right onto it. And you can see how that helps me get a nice and even 1/4 inch raw edge pressed under. I'm going to continue that all the way around the skirt, and we'll go ahead and skip ahead through the magic of video to the next part. Alright, now I've gotten almost all the way back to the beginning of where I was pressing my skirt, and I'm going to show you in the close-up how I folded it again 1¼ inches this time to make that casing that we're going to put the elastic in. So this time I'm lining up my presser guide a little further away from the edge. I want my fabric to get all the way down to this 1¼ inch line, but then I'm just doing the same thing. I'm pressing again right against the edge of that cardstock. Now I've actually gone ahead and done this all the way around the skirt already, but you can see now how this is going to be forming the casing that the elastic is going to be going through. All right, while I'm over at the ironing board anyways, I'm gonna take this opportunity to use my little presser cheat sheet, and I'm also going to press the hem of this skirt. So I'm going to be pressing the edge up 1/2 inch. And then once I'm done with that all the way around the skirt, I'll be going around and I will be pressing it up again 1/2 inch. And that will form the hem for the skirt. But we'll skip that part on the video too. All right, now that I've got the skirt sewn basically into a big loop here, and I've got on one edge the casing and on one edge the hem pressed, all that's left to do is to sew these 2 seams and then to thread the elastic through. So to sew it, I am just going to line my fabric up, and I want the needle to be hitting very close to that folded edge of the casing. Now I'm not using pins, and I feel comfortable with that, but I've been sewing for a long time. If you haven't, you may want to pin this casing to make sure that it stays exactly where you need it to as you sew. So I'm just going to sew along the lower edge of the casing there. And I'm going to continue to do this all the way around the skirt, but I'm going to stop about 2 inches before the point where I started. That opening in the casing will be where I feed the elastic through. Alright, so I've sewn the casing all the way around the top of my skirt, and I went ahead and sewed the hem already as well. All I've got left to do is to insert the elastic and to close the opening that I left in the casing. Before I insert the elastic, I'm actually going to hold it in a loop, like it will be when it's inserted into the waistband. And on the same side of the elastic, on each end, I'm just going to make myself a little X on the elastic. I'm using a washable marker here, so I don't have to worry about that bleeding through and staining my skirt. The reason I've done this is because that way when the elastic comes back out of the skirt, I can make sure it's not twisted. You wouldn't want to sew it together twisted, because that would then have to come back out and be fixed. Next, I'm going to place a safety pin through the elastic, and then I'm simply going to take that safety pin and I'm going to use it to insert the elastic into the opening that I left in the casing, the part that I didn't sew, and I will be pulling the elastic using that safety pin all the way through the casing. Now, because this skirt is so full and it's going to be a lot longer than the actual elastic, I am going to take the other end of the elastic and I'm going to pin it to the skirt. That'll prevent me from accidentally pulling the elastic all the way into the casing and then having to pull it out and start over. Alright, so I'm almost out the other end with my elastic, and I'm just going to finish pulling the safety pin through. And then I want to check and make sure that I haven't twisted the elastic anywhere. And it looks like it's fine, so I'm going to remove the safety pin. I'm going to unpin the other end of the elastic where I pinned it to the skirt. And I want to just overlap those 2 edges of elastic. I'm going to put them in my machine. I'm going to set my machine to a really wide and very short stitch length zigzag. And I'm going to zigzag the 2 pieces of elastic together. And I'm going to reverse stitch and zigzag back over that same spot. And then I'll cut my thread and I'll switch back to my straight stitch. Now all you have to do is kind of pull the skirt top to distribute the fullness around the skirt evenly. Stretch it out a few times and you'll see that it starts to distribute. You do want to keep it flat right where your opening for the skirt was, because now we just need to stick that back under the sewing machine, and we're gonna sew right along the edge there, not catching the elastic, just the skirt. But we're gonna close that opening, and then we'll go ahead and stretch out that part of the skirt too, and then we've got a nice little super simple skirt. I know we skipped a lot of time in the video, but I do want to say that this entire skirt, even with the parts that I skipped and edited out of the video, only took about 45 minutes to sew from beginning to end. So it's an easy, fast sewing project.